Shortly after the Edict of Milan, right, we have the Edict of Thessalonica, and it was issued on the 27th of February, 380, by Theodosius, Emperor Theodosius. And basically, he makes Catholicism of the Nicene Creed or Nicene Christians the state church of the Roman Empire. And then he condemns other Christian creeds. Like if you're not practicing exactly the Nicene Creed, if you're doing this thing called Arianism, it's considered a heresy, and you will be punished. You will be arrested, you'll be jailed, you'll be imprisoned, all these type of things. So basically, the Edict of Thessalonica incorporated this Theodosian code, which was the milestone of the official Christianization of the Roman Empire. And look what happens, right? Christianity is spreading like a virus. It becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire, right? And then what we see here is the first celebration, right? We see celebration. This is the first official celebration that's authenticated by the emperor himself, right? So it's really December 25th. The reason is the way the software designates the date. The true astrological date is December 25th, but because of the counting of the Julian and Gregorian calendars, because they're off by a day, it's actually showing what that day would be. So that's something, it is December 25th, 380 is the first real official day. And this is how they celebrate it, a little bit different than we celebrate it today. And what do we see? Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, triple conjunction occurs. And we see the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. And so this Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune triple conjunction coincided with this profound historical transformation within the collective. This ushered in a new cultural worldview that set in motion the destruction of the old one. Sounds like what's happening today, right? During the Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, we see this alignment in the early 4th century. There was a changing of the gods. A powerful archetypal subterranean forces were unleashed that led to the destruction of the Roman Empire and the death of its gods. This is the complete collapse of not the empire just itself, but of all the different pagan religions, or all the different the Roman gods, the Greek gods, all the different gods. All right, this is the beginning of the end or the collapse of paganism that dominated throughout the Roman Empire. And by the way, Rome had many, many religions. Rome had no problem with different religions. That's why it allowed for Judaism. They had no issues with Judaism. They had a problem with Judea breaking away from Rome, defying Rome, right? So what I'm getting at here is this is the collapse of all of these different types of belief systems. And so we see this nascent underlying matrix emerging on the metaphysical beliefs and dogma of Christianity that offered spiritual comfort and the prospect of salvation. This concept, you can achieve salvation through accepting Christ. This is a very Saturn, Neptune, Pluto archetypal viewpoint, right? That you can receive salvation, the prospect of salvation decreed by the spiritual authority of the church. That's Saturn, right? That's Saturn. You can see that Saturn, spiritual authority to achieve the spiritual comfort of achieving salvation would eclipse Roman authority and rule by the early 5th century. And the church becomes then what? The church becomes the most powerful entity in the post-Roman Empire period. So we see the Christianization of Europe. So after the disintegration of the Roman Empire, we see the Christianization of the Germanic people, and many popular customs associated with Christmas developed independently of the celebration of Jesus's birth, with many elements having origins in pre-Christian festivals that was celebrated around the winter solstice by pagan populations throughout Europe, who were later converted to Christianity between 300 and 600 AD. In fact, we have a letter from Pope Gregory I to Saint Mellitus, who was on his way to England to conduct a missionary work, basically converting pagans. He was going over to Britain, going over to Scotland, and going to Ireland to convert these pagans, especially among the Anglo-Saxons. And Pope Gregory suggests to St. Mellitus that converting the heathens would go easier if they were allowed to retain their outward forms of their traditional pagan practices and traditions while recasting those traditions spiritually toward the Christian God instead of their pagan devils. And to that end, while some gratifications are outwardly permitted them, they may more easily consent to the inward consolations of the graces and grace of God. So we could see this was the plan to convert. It was a conversion process taking place. And this correlates very well. When we look at, okay, this massive global transformation that is occurring. We see the processional shift into the age of Pisces. And this is accelerated and intensified by this triple conjunction where we see the collapse of the empire, we see the rise of the church, and we see this new paradigm, this new belief system, right, that now supersedes Roman authority or post-Roman authority. And this leads to Christmastide. So what happens is once we see a good chunk of Europe essentially Christianized, right? In 567, the Council of Tours, located in central France, proclaimed the entire period between Christmas and Epiphany should be considered part of the festive celebration commemorating the birth of Jesus. So this is what became known as the 12 Days of Christmas. And after Christianity became fully embraced in Northern Europe by the 11th century, Yule, right, the Yuletime festival, later underwent a Christianized reformulation, resulting in the term Christmastide that begins upon sunrise on Christmas Day and lasts for 12 days from December 25th to January 5th, the later date, January 5th, being named as 12th night, marking the visits of the three magi, the three astrologers, to the Christ child in Bethlehem. So that's how the 12 days of Christmas gets established. And what we see here is with Yule, right? The Yuletide 12-day festival is really an ancient pagan 12-day festival beginning on the date of the winter solstice. That's originally the day of the winter solstice occurs about 4 to 5 days prior to Christmas. So now the pre-Christian elements of Yuletide was the Yule log, a specifically selected huge log that was burned at the hearth. It was a big, huge log that was burned on a hearth lasting for 12 days of Christmas based on this Germanic paganism. And this Yule log had magical properties. And this became one of the most widespread Christmas traditions in medieval Europe, which the first recording of its appearance dating back to 1184. And during this period, right, while you're doing this Yuletide, Yule log, there's drinking, singing, hunting, exchanging of gifts was celebrated by the Germanic people in pre-Christian Europe. And the Yuletide custom was the sacrifice and offering up of goods and animals, horses too, to the gods in order to conquer the darkness of winter, right? So they drank a toast to the Norse god Odin for victory and power to the king, and the second toast to the god Freya for good harvest and for peace. And the third toast was to be drunk to the king himself. So this is part of how this becomes part of this tradition. And so these pre-Christian elements of Yuletide become very much part of what we see today.
To watch the full presentation and more like this on geopolitics, the economy, and world events from an archetypal and mundane astrological perspective, join the Global Transformation Astrology membership. Go to gta.williamstickevers.com. Become a GTA member today.